All right. Can you please break down the history of prosperity preaching and its negative impact on the black church?
That's a serious question. The history of prosperity. First of all, let me say this, that prosperity, people wanting to prosper, has been around since the beginning of mankind, right? You got some tribe living in a village somewhere praying for rain because they want their harvest to be better than last year. You know, they're praying, this is a form of prosperity. So it's not, you know, tied to just our modern context. But in terms of the church itself, there is a prominent preacher. His name was E.W. Kenyon. He's seen as being one of the leading figures of what is considered modern prosperity preaching. Now, prosperity preaching has to do not just with wealth, it has to do with health, your overall well-being, right? That God wants us to prosper in all phases of our lives. A later figure who picked this up was a preacher, a famous rock preacher named Kenneth Hagin. A lot of these were charismatic Pentecostal preachers, right? Now, in terms of the African-American context, you have figures like Daddy Grace or Father Divine. I mean, these are early preachers who really took on the prosperity message. And somebody like Daddy Grace, for instance, he sold products that he would bless. You know, these commercials we used to see, if you want, blessed water, or he had blessed toothpaste, all this kind of stuff he would sell. Now, for most people, they don't have a problem with prosperity gospel in terms of health or even congregants achieving some kind of superior economic status. You know, they have a problem with preachers start making a bunch of money and they're having private jets and they're driving around Rolls Royces and so forth. And that is something that even some of the early figures in American prosperity gospel preaching had a problem with. So for instance, Kenneth Hagin, this is a few decades ago, this is not like back in the early 20th century. He wasn't comfortable with, you know, preachers say like a creflo dollar today. Taking the message, making it almost purely economical in a sense. So for them, the comprehensive view of what it meant to be, to prosper in God, whatever the case may be, became too focused on economics. And that the economic focus is what a lot of people have a problem with in terms of the African-American community. Because you have persons in the African-American community who are claiming prosperity and their whole livelihood doesn't reflect that yet. So for instance, the person who's saying, well, God wants me to be blessed, I'm gonna get a Mercedes, but I'm still living in the projects. Or you have the person that says, you know, God wants me to be blessed, they take out some crazy mortgage on a house when they're working at Walmart or something like that. You know, so that's where the imbalance comes in. You have communities who don't have the means to flourish economically, but yet they're still hearing this message that this is what God wants them to do. So I think that's the biggest problem many people have with it.
Are preachers in a rough spot? Because I've noticed that preachers who don't preach a prosperity doctrine, their attendance seems a little light.
But this started years ago after the Second World War, when this country saw the biggest rise in the middle class in world history in terms of wealth, right? You had parishioners or congregants who went to church. They didn't want to hear about the blessings of poverty anymore. They want to follow the preacher who was living in some small parsonage who was not economically secure. They wanted to see the way they were living reflected in the pulpit. So that's why they wanted to see ministers who were living well. And to be honest, another thing that happened is that's when a lot of pastors began to follow this model of the businessman, you know, being economically successful, and the churches were viewed as being places where you could have could attain some level of economic success. So it wasn't all, you know, figures like Daddy Grace again or Father Divine, parishioners too, because they started to live better, and because they started to move to the suburbs, and they started having 2 cars and the 4-bedroom, 2-bedroom house and the fenced-in yard and all that. They wanted pastors or preachers in a way to reflect what they were doing and to let them, in many ways, make them feel comfortable with their lifestyles. And I think that's where the connect came to. So part of it were certain leaders who exploited it, but it's also parishioners who again began to become more affluent in the white community, predominantly, and later became, took hold of the African-American community, but basically in the white community where it started, and wanted their leaders, their church leaders, kind of reflect the lifestyle they were living. So that's kind of in a way the roots of that.